Good morning, everyone. We are live from council chambers.
Well, good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting back to order, and we'll do a roll call. Councillor Wright,
Good morning.
Councillor Knack,
Good morning.
Councillor Principe,
Good morning.
Councillor Stevenson,
Good morning.
Councillor Paquette,
Good morning.
Councillor Tang,
Good morning.
Councillor Hamilton,
Good morning.
Councillor Rutherford, Councillor Salvador,
Good morning.
Councillor Cartmel,
Good morning.
Councillor Rice,
Good morning.
Councillor Jans.
Good morning.
All right. And we were on 10.5, amendments to district policy, moved by Councillor Principe. And I think we had a list of speakers. Councillor Stevenson, I can't remember who were on the list. We can start all over again, I guess. Let's just start with Councillor Stevenson.
Sure, thank you. I think maybe to administration, something that stands out to me in this current policy is that it speaks to, in sort of the preamble, properties that have a certain site size and scale, I believe the wording is. Could you clarify? That would sort of preclude maybe, an individual single detached house lot from applying to these regulations?
Councillor Stevenson, yes. 2.5.2.7, the context of that clause is about additional scale of low rise or greater in locations where the site size and context allow for that appropriate transition. And it's really intended to support that organic growth of higher density. So transitioning in scale from taller to smaller. There are three policy directions in the district policy that we often reference at public hearing. There's one that's related to smaller scale, one that's related to low rise, and the policy referenced in this motion is additional scale from low rise. So I know there was reference to Monday's public hearing, but Monday's public hearing was related to small scale, more intense small scale. So the policy we're talking about is 2.5.2.7, which is the additional scale of low rise or greater.
Okay. And so again, these would be places where low rise would already be supported by policy, and it would be even greater than low rise.
Depending on the site size and the context, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So then maybe to the mover, like I think I understood your intent of sort of a wanting to avoid the domino effect. I'm just wondering your thoughts again, sort of understanding that this is more around that not small scale, but low rise context.
Yes, thank you. So as we discussed yesterday, my intention is I would like to see a report back to get all this information in writing. So as we discussed yesterday, I was hoping someone would make that amendment. I see it's not technically hasn't been done yet, but I was hoping someone would make the amendment to make it a report back. Okay.
Maybe just to administration, what scale of work would you anticipate? So if this was changed to just say report back, is that a significant body of work?
The motion is quite clear in terms of its direction, so I don't think a report to committee is necessary because we have a report on the public hearing agenda. So a committee meeting is helpful when we're looking for a decision, direction, or budget from committee. And the decision here is to remove letter E from the policy. So that is a fairly simple report on a public hearing agenda. So to me, the Urban Planning Committee is maybe additional process, not necessary, because there is a report as part of the bylaw on a land use public hearing.
And that report would outline the potential implications of the deletion?
It would, yeah. It would have the rationale, the planning rationale, and administration's recommendation.
What do you have? Can you anticipate what administration's recommendation may be at this point?
I think in general, it would likely be to not support. You know, the purpose of this policy is really to support the transition and scale from taller to smaller, and can create or support the development of a local node. Council approved a motion on Monday related to district plans that does warrant a report in terms of looking at options and the analysis of limiting mid-block redevelopment larger than small-scale development. So if you recall from Monday, that was the motion that we are working on. And to me, this is, you know, one of the elements of the conditions that would be removed. But it's still in the other two policies related to low rise and more intense small scale. So I just think maybe there's some consistency or an approach here that we need to think through versus just removing adjacent to site zoned for greater than small scale. The letter E is what that is.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. So could this analysis or analysis for this be incorporated in that other report?
From the motion on Monday, Councillor Wright?
Yes.
The motion on the floor right now is very specific. It's to remove criteria E. And so I guess if the intent would be to, you know, consider or review the impacts of removing criteria E and folding it into the motion that we got on Monday, or that council approved on Monday. That motion was due Q4 of 2026, so slightly different time frame as well.
Okay, and you're right. So I was waiting for administration or the clerk's office to come back with an amendment for a report to come to committee. But you're saying that's just an extra step in the process?
For this particular motion, I believe it is, because the motion is very clear, remove criteria E. When a bylaw is at public hearing, there is a report attached that provides the analysis and recommendation. So I see an Urban Planning Committee report as an unnecessary step in the process.
So that would mean a report at urban planning, and then if that were to, if the councillor wanted to proceed with that, then that would mean another report for public hearing.
Correct.
Okay, and advertising for this then would, in either case, would still require advertising?
The Urban Planning Committee is not advertised in the same way as a land use public hearing. So a land use public hearing, we do have advertising requirements for the bylaw.
Okay, so again, in both cases, then whether we get the report ahead of time or not, we would still need advertising.
And council can choose to approve it or not at a public hearing, you know, versus at a Urban Planning Committee. Committee would choose to support next steps or not. So I just think at a land use public hearing, council can make the decision to approve or refuse the bylaw change.
Okay. Okay, so maybe I will not further the request for an amendment to that then, and just consider this on its own. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Knack, are you able to take the chair?
I've got the chair.
Thank you. So Kim, in just a layperson's language, can you explain it to me what is the purpose of E?
So in the district policy, the general district policy, there's a a set of criteria where we would consider additional scale from a low rise or greater, so an apartment building or higher, in locations where the site size and the context would allow for a transition. And the policy describes a number of criteria where we would consider that. So if it's in a node or corridor, within 400 meters of a transit station, if it's along an arterial or collector,
Yeah.
on a corner site, or E, adjacent to a site zoned for greater than small scale.
So if it's an apartment building, say 10-story apartment building,
And this is the site next
so
door.
next site,
Correct.
E allows it to be 12-story or 6-story, like what is it?
We would look for that transition, right? So it would
Transition
be-
down or transition up?
Well, if you had a small scale on the other side of that, we would look to see that potentially transition down. So we'd want to look at the context of,
Would you also look transition up too, or like,
well, we'd want to see what was happening across the street, what's happening behind. So we'd look at the area.
yeah,
And to see what fits the context and location and the site size of that particular site. And so this was put into the district policy as a way to look at additional intensification in areas that were not specifically in a node and corridor.
okay. So if it's area outside of the corridor,
Yeah, what would
but,
be the context or the criteria that we would look at additional density or intensification?
in the context of other criteria, like in
Yes.
combination with other criteria as.
Yes.
Like, so E itself is not applicable on its own. It is applicable in the.
In the
In
list.
combination of A, B, C, D, right?
Correct. And the way the policy is worded is that we would consider additional scale of low-rise if you meet at least two of the criteria. So the intent of this motion would be to remove letter E, so it reduces the criteria list.
So it reduces from 5 to 4, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then out of 4, 2 must be, you gotta meet 2.
Correct.
Now in this, now currently is you meet 2 out of 3, out of 5.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
And for just additional clarity, in the district policy, we have like 2.525. So there's 3 policy sections that relate to where we would consider more intense development for small scale, low rise, and then greater than low rise. This motion is related only to greater than low rise. So 2.5.2.7 in the district policy.
Okay. I don't know if that is, I know. Okay. So what would removal of E restricts?
It would reduce the number of locations that we would consider supporting rezoning that would increase the density. It would just reduce the criteria.
I see, reduce the density within that. Okay, got it, okay. Oh, thank you. But it still has to, like, again, that still has to come to council, right?
It does. This is all related to
Rezoning,
rezoning
yeah,
applications where we would consider an administrative position of support or
Okay.
non-support.
And
depending
council
on the
can
criteria.
still consider that whether to support or not support as
That's
we
correct.
do, as council has the ability to say no or yes. Okay,
That's
got, okay, that is clear. Thank you so much, appreciate it. I will take the chair back.
I'll return the chair.
Okay, okay. Right, so, okay, so we have concluded questions to this, now to speak. All right, to speak. Okay, Councillor Principe to, Councillor Stevenson.
I apologize being late on that. I really appreciate the discussion, and I absolutely appreciate where the mover is coming from. I think it is really important that we continue to refine and adjust these policies. Again, we made a similar motion on Monday to do exactly that. Um, for me, I feel that this amendment, the specificity of it, I don't think. I think that the principle overall is reasonable. That we do want to be providing transition, and the existence of higher zone properties, I think, is an important consideration when looking at supporting or at least considering additional height in some areas. I think administration highlighted that this provision does exist in two other components of the plan. So I do worry that this specific amendment creates some inconsistency. Um, and so at this point won't be supporting, but again, continue to look forward to ongoing um, adjustments and improvements to our policies as we see them in practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Principe to close? Nope. Okay, please vote.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
I'm getting a spinning wheel, so I'm a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Okay, now we are on to the next item is 10.6 Vehicle Noise Automated Technology Pilot Project. Councillor Jans.
Thank you. I move the following motion that administration establish a vehicle noise automated technology pilot project with one-time funding of $50,000 from the 2025 council contingency. Number two, that administration provide a report on the vehicle noise automated technology pilot project, including opportunities for future enforcement, expansion, and advocacy opportunities. May I introduce it?
I'll second it. Go ahead.
Great. So since 2019, technology has been evolving rapidly in the noise control space. I've met with this one company, and I'll reference the company. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to reference the company in chambers or not, but I imagine we'll follow all our procurement guidelines and can figure it out. But I've met with at least one company. I've actually met with a couple. The technology has been rapidly improving here. It is now so precise; it can pinpoint exactly what vehicle is emitting the noise. It's held up in court. It's been challenged multiple times in court in the United States. I sent my colleagues an article from the Wall Street Journal highlighting this precision and how the technology has worked. They do not have any of this technology yet in Canada. It exists in France, the United Kingdom, America, but it's yet to be used in Canada. So I think from my back and forth with government folks, there's kind of a chicken and egg here where they want to know something works before they approve it, but they don't want to approve something before they know it works. This is a chance for us to try out some of that equipment. It can be a huge impact in terms of helping determine exactly which vehicles are contributing to the noise problem, what areas of town are experiencing the noise problem. It's really cool. They have mobile units where they can be moved around to random locations, or they can be static, like attached to a post at some of the high needs areas. We often hear anecdotes that, the high level bridge is noisy or the Henday is noisy. But what this would give us precisely that data, that it was this many vehicles at this many times going this many speeds, etc. And that information can be relayed to Edmonton Police Service. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. Councillor Principe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Jans, to the mover, I see the one-time funding is for $50,000. So in your discussion with the company that you had mentioned, was that the number that you got, $50,000 would cover the pilot project?
So there's the cost of the machines. There's also the cost of our staff time on the city side, somebody who then gets the data from the machines, decides what to do with it, whether they send it to EPS. Right now, it's a manual enforcement. Like, you have to have good luck with your phone that you catch a vehicle, you get the license plate, you can get the make and model, you can identify it, and then you turn it into EPS via EPS's form, and then EPS decides what to do with it, whether they give a warning, whether they issue a ticket, whether they do something else. Right now, it's all manual reporting. What this would do was allowed for the administration to potentially buy one or more of the machines, or rent one or more of the machines, and also then cover some of the staff time that would go towards this. I believe we have over $70,000 left in the council contingency, so this would be an opportunity to do that.
Okay, great. And then Mr. Jones, so would the city be able to take on that work?
That's a good question. So I don't know about the $50,000. I know that we ran a similar pilot in 2020 and it cost about 200 grand. But with respect to staffing, I don't have anybody to assign to this. So I would have to look at reducing services in other kind of, as we rank order all of our services, I would have to look at the prioritization of all of those services and figure out who we could take offline to look after a pilot like this. I would also suggest the timing is difficult. Summer is kind of the peak season for vehicle noise complaints. And so I don't know if we could get through a procurement process and privacy impacts and all of that by next summer. So this may actually have to go into the summer of 2027. We would have to take a look at that from a timing perspective as well.
Okay, and is there any provincial legislation or federal legislation that would prevent us from doing this?
Well, we couldn't use this for any type of enforcement purposes as the provincial legislation currently stands, because there's no regulations, there's nothing set up with the courts. I'd defer to my partners in legal services for a full answer there, but certainly there's nothing that we could do from an enforcement purpose on what we gather for this intelligence.
Councillor, I'll just add, for enforcement purposes, Mr. Jones is quite correct that we don't have authority to use this to issue tickets or take enforcement action. We would have the ability to use it for data collection as well. There would be privacy implications we would have to closely look at and want to just make sure that privacy review is completed, just in the event that this is photo enforcement that would capture personal information, images of people. So there are a few steps that would need to take place before we could just throw this into service.
Okay, thank you for those answers.
Thank you, Councillor Prince. Councillor Wright.
I thank you. Yeah, I was wondering sort of about the legalities of it under, the Traffic Safety Act or the Police Act. And then Councillor Jans had mentioned that it's sort of held up in the U.S. courts. Our court systems are different than the U.S. though, aren't they?
They are. Similar principles would apply. One thing I would flag is that simply because it's been adopted or accepted by a court in the United States, we would still, if it was the first time it was going through in Canada, we would still need to prove the technology most likely. So as opposed to just it being assumed that it's working and that it's tested before and after, which is the usual standard, we'd actually probably have to bring in expert evidence the first time just to get it demonstrated and have the court accept that it is technology that functions for its intended purpose and can be relied upon.
Okay. And then, but by just sort of selecting this one company, is that considered a sole source contract, even if it is just for a pilot?
Maybe I will let see Mr. Sorabi is on the call, but that is a concern legally that we would want to address, but I'll turn it over to my colleague to jump into that a little bit further.
Absolutely. Happy to take that question. Councillor, the value of the contract, if it stays under 75,000, it is still a single source, or a single source because there are potentially other providers. But we could do that. But our procurement standard and processes recommends we take a minimum of 3 quotations at least when we want to award a contract under 75,000. For this case, if there is an expectation for the value to go over 75,000, we recommend doing a complete public procurement just to be on the safe side to account for future expansion. So the pilots on its own could be directly awarded, but the concern is what if we want to expand, and that could create a situation of compliance with our procurement mandates.
Okay, so if we did expand it beyond that, then we would have to go to a more robust procurement process.
I believe we should use that process right now, just to be on the safe side, given a pilot, well, at some point there is a likelihood of it to be not to be a pilot and be expanded.
Okay, so I'm just wondering if the mover would be agreeable, rather than sort of committing right at this point to do the pilot, would a report just for information on some sort of analysis and assessment? Would you be willing to drop part 1?
No, I think we need to actually start using the technology, and we need to trial that out. I have a number of responses. First of all, I believe this is very different to what we did in 2019 with the big program with the $200,000. Even if we just get one of these machines up in one location and start collecting the data from it and turn it over to the Edmonton Police Service, traffic safety folk, there's already somebody dealing with this. They already have a noise complaint form, which right now people are manually submitting cell phone pictures to, or anecdotal complaints. So all this would be doing is helping us use another technology to prove that. Once we're using the technology, once we can actually show its effectiveness, even if it's in fall, even if it's in winter, we still have noisy vehicle problems in fall and winter. This then gets us a step forward to then have something to actually show. I think the questions from my colleagues here exactly highlight why we need to try something different, why we need to do this. This is not the same as 2019 when we were putting up the soundboard and showing people how these are incredibly discrete little machines that would give us a ton of data that right now is just being done by civilian reporting.
And do we have anybody on from EPS that maybe can tell us what they're doing with the data that they are getting already?
I have shared emails from constituents, Councillor, that people have reported, and sometimes they say go to a station and fill out a statement, or other times they've said they will issue a ticket depending on what's provided. Other times I've seen emails too where these are emails sent to me from constituents. There was a noisy truck. The EPS called the person and gave them a warning because it was a mechanical issue. So they're already doing it, but I feel bad for our team at EPS where they're just getting all of these anecdotes, photos, etc. They're not getting hard and fast vehicle 1, 2, 3, 4 was this not loud at this time, and they can actually have something to work with there.
Okay.
Even if it's just a warning.
No one is on from EPS though, right?
Nope.
No, there's no
Thank
one
you.
on EPS.
Thank you. Councillor Paquette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to strike part 1 of the motion.
Their administration staff. Okay, part 1. You want to moving to strike? No.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I need a seconder.
Point of order.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering, striking 1 makes 2 inoperative, as there'd be no pilot project to report back on?
I think we can ask those questions when we are talking about debating striking part 1.
Second.
Okay. We can ask those questions at that time. Okay, there's a motion to strike part 1. Questions on striking part 1.
I'll just introduce if I may.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Paquette, can you make the introduction, please?
Yeah, so from what we've heard today, we're not sure if that budget is proper, a proper allocation of budget for the pilot project. So even if it passes, it probably is not going to be successful with that particular budget on the board. And then if that budget grows, I'm not sure exactly where we get that money from. That hasn't been detailed yet. And furthermore, we also heard that because this is not EPS driven, there is some question about the enforcement ability of this and how we would navigate that. And third, I'm not sure if legal has been checked in with. At least I haven't seen anything that would indicate what the potential legal issues are around this, and we should probably know that first before we move toward a pilot. Part 2 still has the pilot project in it, so get a report back that would actually detail all of those things, the funding, the legal, the jurisdiction. We can bring EPS into it because maybe they want to fund it. Maybe they want to do it with the budget that they already have. So I understand that, we'd probably want to move on this faster, but it's got to be done in a way that we can have success rather than just kind of doing a Hail Mary to let the public know we're doing something. So that's my intro.
Thank you. Councillor Tang, on the amendment?
Well, it's all related, so yeah.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
No. Okay, I guess to administration. Do you, I guess, can you tell me a little bit about our current approach to noisy vehicles? And what kind of data have we collected comparing this year's violation compared to last year's violation?
Sure, I can jump in on that. Every year for 5 years, I believe, we've been part of Operation Tensor with the Edmonton Police Service. Obviously, the Edmonton Police Service as police of jurisdiction leads any traffic safety enforcement efforts for the city, but certainly our peace officers help contribute to that Operation Tensor, which focuses on both vehicle noise and speed enforcement. One of the things from the 2020 report that was noted is there's a fairly significant crossover between vehicle speed and the vehicle noise complaints. And so we try to do a two-pronged approach to address both of those. I'm afraid I don't have stats from this year and comparing them to last year on hand. But certainly we've been participating in that EPS-led approach for the last 5 years.
So it's been pretty steady, like same approach, same amount of resource every year since 2020. Is that right?
Yeah, there was the addition of the bylaw, the extra bylaw ticket offense for vehicle noise that was added to our arsenal of tools to use, which I know is used for because the significantly higher penalty involved and the fact that there's a similar section in the Traffic Safety Act that we use that for kind of repeat offenses or really egregious offenses, but certainly it's part of the additional arsenal that we've had in those 5 years. But otherwise, we do moving and static locations for Tensor.
Right, and then even with that higher penalty, do you have information on whether we have collected more of that, we have issued more of those tickets this year compared to last year?
Again, I don't have those stats.
I think what I'm worried about is since 2020, the Traffic Act has changed a number of times to limit our tools as a municipality. And, the message I'm hearing from the community is that there is no penalty there's a lesser penalty for speeding, and by association, lesser penalty for, the noise aspect. And I'm worried that by keeping the status quo of how we're doing this, we won't be making much of a dent. So I'm just starting to speak to it. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Knack.
Sorry, just to speak.
Okay. Councillor Jans, you have questions?
No, just to speak.
Okay, Councillor Stevenson, you have questions, right?
Just to speak.
Okay. Councillor Knack, can you take the chair, please?
I've got the chair.
So what tools do we have now? Like I'm honestly, Dave, this is the most frustrating thing. The amount of frustration that I hear every day from Edmontonians on noisy vehicles, people who deliberately make noise. It's not broken muffler. People who deliberately disturb the peace of their neighbors. And I have no way to tell them that we are doing something to control it. What are we doing, David?
Well, again, the EPS is the lead agency on all things traffic safety and vehicle violation related, but we do support their Project Tensor on an annual basis.
So as peace officers, you have no tools whatsoever to enforce vehicle deliberate noise coming from even idling vehicles. People, like I get complaints from Astor Plaza where people just park their vehicles and deliberately make noise. This is not about speeding, this people just revving up. Don't you have the tools in that case?
Yeah, we do have the parameters given to us in both the provincial and bylaw legislation in order to address those. But I will say that apart from our general duty peace officers, that's not their primary mandate. And so, you know, if it's park rangers, they're in the parks, they're often out on bikes, they're, otherwise disposed, they're not doing vehicle stops on a routine basis. We don't have a dedicated traffic safety or traffic enforcement team like the EPS does. So, again, we follow their lead. And we participate in those annual.
If somebody's parked, they have the motorbike parked, they have vehicle parked, they're just standing there idling, making noise. Is that does that fall under traffic safety? Does that fall under kind of social disorder, orderly behavior, or the tools you may have in that case?
Well, it would still be traffic-related offenses in either the bylaw or the provincial acts. If it's a motorcycle, we don't have the capacity to test the motorcycles. The equipment and the capacity to do that and the training all sits with the EPS. And so when it comes to Project Tensor, when it comes to a motorcycle, the EPS do all the testing because it's a fairly rigorous process that's been set up by the courts with respect to like the distance that the microphone has to sit from the back of the tailpipe and at idle and then at rev, at whatever revs, all that kind of thing has to be documented in order to actually write the tickets for a noisy motorcycle.
Yesterday we talked about reputational risk. This is the biggest reputational risk to our corporation, that we are unable to do something to give people peace of mind, right? Okay, I'll stop here.
I would say that, like I said, we don't have the primary mandate for traffic safety. If we were given that direction from council, then we would look at other services that we would deprioritize in order to tackle this. And
I know, I understand. I know you're frustrated too, but I think that residents don't see the distinction between city of Edmonton, bylaw officer, peace officers, and police officers when it comes to this, right? And I think I'm going to raise this today actually at the luncheon with EPS too, right? Just so frustrating. Okay, I'll take the chair back.
I'll return the chair.
Councillor Cardinal?
My questions aren't on the motion, so I'll wait to see what happens with this motion.
Thank you. All right, so now to speak.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask questions first?
Yes, you can. Councillor Jans, go ahead, please.
Thank you. To legal, could you walk me through what the current process is for a noisy vehicle complaint?
Yeah, I can answer that. In terms of, there's a few options. So we do have our bylaw provisions as well as the provisions under the Traffic Safety Act. If a resident or someone in Edmonton wants to make a noisy vehicle complaint, they can file a complaint to the Edmonton Police Service about that. Generally speaking, depending on how much information they're able to gather, EPS may or may not be able to action it with enforcement. There is limited, albeit some ability, that if you have a license plate, a ticket could be issued to the registered owner of the vehicle, although generally speaking, that would be probably either an egregious or a rare situation. The hope being that if EPS is able to follow up, that, they give a warning or make the person know that the community or that the neighborhood is seeing them and is not happy with what's going on.
So I'm curious about this privacy assessment you spoke to. If you're on a public road and your license plate is visible and you're doing some sort of a traffic infraction, whether in the school zone or elsewhere, or right now in partnership with Project Tensper, there are grounds or situations where the city would assist EPS in their duties, right?
There would be situations where the city, where the peace officers would assist and work with EPS to do enforcement. When I raised the privacy assessment, what I was referring to is that this is an automated technology. It takes pictures. And so, I'm sure many have heard of stories of photo radar or pictures being taken showing people or showing multiple people in a vehicle when it was unexpected that would be the case. It can raise significant privacy issues if we're collecting data that even shows so much as a silhouette of a person, because that could be personal information. So we just want to take a look at it carefully before rolling it out to make sure that we're compliant with all privacy legislation in Alberta and not inadvertently collecting images that could create problems for us. There's also
if we were to approve this motion today, and you were to review it, and you deemed it, if you take a look at the technology, what they're doing, etc., and you deem it unsuitable, you would then be able to tell us, no, we're not going to proceed with this, right?
No, and I don't think it would be so much deeming it unsuitable as much as just looking carefully to make sure that if steps to be taken. Sorry,
you just muted there.
Yeah, steps to be taken that we would need to protect personal information or just have plans to mitigate any unintended privacy issues. We would need to go through that process. It's not a matter of saying it's an absolute no-go, but we just want to make sure that doesn't get lost or overlooked. And that will take a little bit of time and will ultimately take a little bit of resource.
Right. So you could, if this motion passed today, you would be able to go and have those conversations, do those reviews, take a look at it, right?
It wouldn't necessarily be legal. We would work with the CAP office, but ultimately it would take some personnel lift to do that review and see that through to fruition.
Because I think part of the challenge here, I have an email from a constituent where they called the minister's office, and the minister was saying that they don't believe that there's any technology sophisticated enough to address the issue. And my understanding is there is, and it's being explored. So it's a bit of a chicken and an egg here. And I think the first step is if we as council give you the funding, can you then it gives you options to then figure out what to do from here.
And I could defer to Mr. Jones in terms of if we have the funding, but the funding is only enough for the product rental or the product lease itself. I just want to make sure it's not lost in the mix that there is a back end lift here, both in enforcement, privacy, as well as, operationalizing these devices, making sure they don't get vandalized.
Sure. The other question I have is we cannot direct EPS how to use their budget. It's up to them. If we were to, are we able to offer again, if we can't do this ourselves as a city, if we were to gift $50,000 for a specific thing to EPS for a specific project, could they pilot this technology? Could they then do this work if they wanted?
We have to be very careful not to direct EPS in terms of how they use their budget. But I think that if there was an opportunity for a joint initiative or there was conversations in advance, I think that's the more appropriate way to work it through. I wouldn't want to see a motion saying we're going to, ultimately direct $50,000 for this exact purpose. Could just have the effect of directing EPS's actions or budget, and we just don't want to do that.
Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson, you have a question, right?
Yeah, thank you so much. I just wanted to circle back to Mr. Jones. I just want to confirm that our peace officers are, recognizing there's a bigger question about resources and dedicated teams, but our peace officers are able to issue the $1,000 ticket that we added to our bylaws. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I will say that not all of our peace officers have under our own policy have the authority to be doing vehicle stops because of the nature of their work. This is something that we're exploring with the mayor's motion on enhanced authorities. We're also looking at what do we limit by policy right now with our existing authorities that we should change. That's one that has come up quite a bit. Obviously, there's different training that goes into conducting safe vehicle stops and administering tickets, all of that we need to look at, but certainly something that we are considering. Again, it's in keeping with the scope of the work. Like, should an animal control officer be worrying more about, dangerous dog enforcement or doing vehicle stops on road noise?
Yeah, certainly. I think, yeah, thank you. I think the other piece, because I can you further explain the comments around, requiring the specialized equipment? Is that, yeah, could you just tell me a little bit more? I wasn't, because I'm hearing that they have the capacity to write this ticket, but then I'm also hearing that they aren't able to because of a lack of equipment.
Yeah, I can see where I've been a bit confusing. So with respect to motorcycles, there are very strict parameters on how to test motorcycles for the exhaust noise. And all of that work is held by the EPS. Where it comes to the bylaw for the $10,000 ticket or regular offenses under the Traffic Safety Act, those are things that our peace officers have the authority to do. Again, not all of them are doing it just because of the nature of their work. But yeah, it's just the motorcycle road noise testing that they don't do.
Okay, that helps clarify. And so again, motorcycles can be subject to our $1,000 bylaw ticket?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Wonderful. Thank you for that clarity.
Thank you. To speak now, Councillor Knack.
Thanks, Mayor Sohi. And sorry to be so sort of abrupt on this, but we've been, I think I heard people are just waiting for some type of action. The steps we've taken, the additional fine really hasn't made any meaningful difference. That's not, to be very clear, and that's not a result of our city staff who work incredibly hard, our enforcement officers. We just don't have enough of them. And EPS, as much as I love the idea of Project Tensor, it clearly isn't fixing the problem. This also won't fix the problem, to be clear, but this could do a couple of things. One, and I think we've heard it through Councillor Jantz's introduction, at a minimum could give us better data to help justify the need for a different enforcement approach. The City of Calgary, I believe it was 3 years ago now, introduced a dedicated team to this that does a dual purpose. They do noisy vehicles in the evening, and then during the day they do school zone enforcement. If we get this tool to measure what I think we all know is happening, which is that it's not getting better, that could ideally help inform the next council during the next 4-year budget to fund the creation of a team that can take a more focused effort on this in the evenings and on weekends, and then during the day for other traffic violations, because as we know now with the removal of photo radar, we are seeing higher speeds, greater unsafe behavior. So I think the solution is going to be a city, not a police-focused team, because they only have so much they can do and we can't direct them. So let's take one small step. This isn't, I wouldn't even consider this moving fast. I would barely consider this moving still. But frankly, it's just not working. It is an issue citywide. We all know it's an issue. Let's give some better data to help inform the next council to likely approve what I think is the only solution at this point, which will be a dedicated team that will require financial resources. So let's make sure that decision is data informed for the next council. Please don't get another report. Getting another report on this issue that we have been talking about for years and years and years is a waste of everyone's time, in my opinion. So I would just say, if we delete this, we might as well just vote against the whole motion because that's not going to provide, in my view, any type of meaningful change or any type of meaningful information for an issue that's been too long standing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Similar to Councillor Knack, I do want to acknowledge that I think the true solution to this is having more enforcement resources. I think a dedicated traffic team is really a critical priority for us as a city, not only for noisy vehicles, which create significant disruption and nuisance in our neighborhood, but also, of course, for supporting traffic safety, which we are seeing trend in the wrong direction. I agree that this pilot offers the opportunity to have better data. And I also feel, again, is recognizing, again, the importance of having sufficient staff resources. If we can have a technology that helps reduce pressure on our enforcement resources, I also think that's a great outcome. This is a good first step forward, and I think will support good outcomes down the road. Thank you. Oh, so I will not be supporting the amendment, and we'll be supporting the main motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. I was quite concerned that we are jumping the gun on by designating the $50,000 in order to get the technology, so I'm hoping that it doesn't. If something can be written into the contract that says it doesn't commit us to any future funding with this company that we're going to be piloting. Listening to my council colleagues, you're right, we need to do something, not only for the noise, but I think that also then goes to some of the speeding that's going on in our neighborhoods as well. I do appreciate, I've seen some peace officers actually have vehicles pulled over in our neighborhoods. So I know they're making some effort, and if we can get the data, not sure what the EPS is doing with the data right now, but if we can get something to show the urgency and the need for this going forward, I will not support the amendment at this time, and will support the full main motion then. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Knack, can you take the chair, please?
I've got the chair.
I understand that traffic enforcement, traffic safety is primarily the EPS responsibility, absolutely. But this is an ongoing frustration. I would say actually frustration has been growing since coming out of COVID. There has been more, I have noticed, more disorderly behavior. People deliberately using their vehicles. This is not just about motorcycles. This is about every type of vehicle being used to disturb peace in our communities. And it is a dangerous behavior maybe for those who are speeding, absolutely, but it's also dangerous behavior for everyone else. And our community well-being is being greatly impacted. And we need to find a way to give tools to our own peace officers, whether it's a tool such as this technology or a pilot, whether it's legislative authorities that we are working on. I don't think we can solely rely on EPS to do this. They have other priorities, but this may not be a top priority for them, but this is one thing I consistently hear from people, and it is actually harming our reputation as a corporation to give people peace of mind, that we are there for them, that we will step up for them, that we will do something. And only way we can do something is empowering our peace officers, whether it's building more teams, whether it's new technology, whether it's more legislative authorities. So I think we need to try this. So I would not be supporting deletion of part 1, and I'll be supporting the entire motion to explore what we can do. Inaction is not an option on this. Thank you.
I'll return the chair.
Okay, Councillor Rutherford.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate this debate today. I seconded this motion because I wanted to hear the debate. But that being said, I'm really struggling with this. I'm struggling with this entire conversation, frankly, because we recently had a conversation with EPS. They came into their annual report and they identified that traffic safety and noisy vehicles were one of the top 3 issues that they're hearing about from Edmontonians. We have 2 commissioners on council that sit on the police commission. Like, we've increased the fines, we've leveraged our tools. Like, I get that it's frustrating that nothing's been done, but I don't think it's fair to say that nothing's been done, or say that we haven't seen the outcomes. But to say that nothing's been done and that we need to take action, I don't think is a fair statement. But I also think about the fact that we have a funding formula with police that was approved. And yet we're going to now put more resources, because obviously what I'm hearing the intent of my colleagues is, let's get data so that we can justify adding more bylaw officers to address this. This is, to me, the opposite of what we're doing, unless we're going to be taking on traffic enforcement as a city and detasking police with that completely, and then adjusting the funding formula accordingly. I'm really at a loss. I feel like our relationship with EPS has improved. Our relationship with the commission has improved. I'm not sure why we're not using those levers. We also heard from legal that, there's a lot of challenges with this. I don't get a sense from the original mover of the main motion that the $50,000 was grounded in a number that is actually going to be realistic to the resources required for this, based on the responses from administration today. So I hear it. I hear it too. The noisy vehicles are a pain, and we absolutely need to address those things. And we need to work with our partners that are legislatively able to do that. I like the idea of using new technology, so this is where I oscillate. I just don't know if this gets us anywhere where we need to be. So I'll listen to Councillor Paquette. I'm not fully decided yet on this amendment and whether, we put this one-time contingency towards this, but I do worry about that this is actually not the true cost of this. Our bylaw team said straight up that they will have to make priorities about reallocating from already limited resources. And we have a lot of things that we want bylaw to be enforcing, from infill to parking to animal care and control to, a million and one other things, park spaces. And I can think of a million and one things that we're trying to get bylaw to do. So, yeah, I'm going to stop here, but I just really don't like this narrative that we've done nothing, when I feel like we've continually been pushing the right authorities to have the right levers, and we've given those tools. Now, can we do more? Absolutely. Is this the more we need to do? I'm not convinced at this point, but I'm being more persuaded by some of my colleagues and then less persuaded by other questions and answers from my colleagues. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Councillor Paquette to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I get it. I absolutely, of course, I understand it. Just about 3 weeks ago, I stopped some kids driving by the neighborhood and told them that their vehicle was too loud. They're probably going to get a ticket. And I get it. It's frustrating. But I'm not sure if the reaction to this frustration is to go forward with a pilot project that does not have enough funding, that takes away from limited resources, that actually doesn't have a properly costed out plan, and one where we have not engaged with all the necessary partners in order to ensure that it is successful. Instead, what it looks like to me is a motion that is trying to communicate to the public that we're doing something, which I understand. But that something we're doing is likely not to be effective. If we want to know more about this technology, we don't have to spend money and reallocate resources to learn if the technology works. We can find that out by seeing what other municipalities have done, looking at the data that the company provides, that sort of thing. So I think we need to separate two things here. One is the desire to do something, and then to have that something be effective. And right now, the desire is very, very much there, and I have that desire as well. The effectiveness, I think, is probably very much in question here. As I said, it's a Hail Mary to just try to tell the public we're doing something, anything. But I think that the mayor said it right. We've got a meeting with the Edmonton Police Commission this afternoon. This can be a key part of that conversation. We can engage with the province and with the minister about the need for enforcement and the tools for enforcement based on their Traffic Safety Act. The additional risk here is we go forward with this pilot and it actually doesn't deliver the data that we want, and we just spent money and reallocated resources for a effort that was not well thought out or planned. Edmontonians do want action, but they don't want wild action. They want focused, deliberate action that is likely to succeed, and they can see the results. I think that absent the conversation with the EPC and EPS, absent the conversation with the company that would provide this technology, absent the conversation about appropriate funding and what the real need is, I cannot, in good conscience, as a governor responsible for people's money and for communicating truth, endorse this. And that's why I had it deleted. I understand, and I think everyone is on the same page about the need. But if we want to address the need, then we have to ensure that what we're doing is right. If you need a new door, you don't replace it with a window that doesn't fit. You try to find a door. And right now, this is a window that doesn't fit. And that doesn't exclude us from doing something proactive anyway. And one last thing, whether this passes or fails, and especially if it fails, I expect that when administration comes back with a report on peace officers, that any number that they recommend for increasing our peace officer contingent will be approved. Because if folks are honestly serious about these issues, then they should get serious about providing the proper tools and funding for administration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is defeated. And now we're back to the main motion. Councillor Cartmel, go ahead, please. Questions?
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, I had two questions. One was, I guess, along the lines of if this technology is acquired, is there something through the Tensor program that would allow and I think this is maybe already asked, but would allow the police service to take that equipment and employ it because they're more involved, or they're the primary force involved in vehicle stops. Is that a possibility still, or is that and maybe that was answered? I'm sorry. Guess that'd be to Mr. Jones.
I actually I don't know how to answer that. You know, I think there are legal restrictions on whether we could maybe talk to them about the data from what they see as the hotspots and place the technology in one of those hotspots in order to probably gather the most intelligence. And again, not knowing how long the pilot project will be, my recommendation would be for the best possible data gathering would be to run this in the summer, because we know that I appreciate that we have noisy vehicles year round, but that really is when we see the peak. That's when we run Tensor with the EPS. It probably give us the richest data set for any determinations about how this could be used for conversations with the province. I don't know how long a procurement process will take. I don't know where we're going to find the staffing resources in order to run this. And so while it would be great to say we'd have it done and dusted by 2026, the summer of 2026, I don't suspect that we could have any meaningful report back in order to have the conversations for the next budget cycle.
Okay, so the 50,000 that has been now, or is now being requested, that would be for like rental, not necessarily staffing.
Well, what I heard from Councillor, well, maybe, I don't know if Councillor John.
Okay, I guess to the mover then. The 50,000 was just for the rental, or is that also?
No, the rental is a very small amount there. It's up to administration if they wanted to, go 80% towards staffing or 10% towards rental or anything else there. There's flexibility there. What I know is that administration doesn't have this set aside in their budget. And I know that EPS doesn't have this set aside in their budget. So unless, we, absent the budget process, unless we provide some funding in some direction to say, go try something out, they aren't going to be able to do that on their own. So this is providing some flexibility and opportunity here for them to try something out and work with partners to do so. They're already working on Project Tensor. They're already working on a number of other traffic safety related things. We already have a number of other initiatives that we're working on to try and build a safer city. This we know from 311 data and from others is one of the largest complaints that we get from citizens and others. Ask the police about it too. This is a huge issue, and this is an opportunity to action on that.
Okay, and was it your expectations that this pilot would be completed then in time for any additional funding requests for the 4-year budget cycle?
No, I didn't put a timeline on it. I mean, because my hope here would be that, we try it out, we get some proof of concept, and we're able to get the minister to change the legislation and see value in this, because it's not just us who are dealing with this problem. Red Deer, Calgary, municipalities across Alberta have reached out to me and others here trying to say, what can we do? I mean, that personed enforcement, having staff on the ground is very not just cost expensive, but it's also quite challenging. If we could use technology to augment that, support that, direct that, show the hotspots, that's incredibly valuable. So there's a number of different outcomes here that could be very positive. The first step is just a smidgen of funding to try out a new technology.
Okay, but not rushing through on the results. Making sure that we've got good data. Okay.
No, I trust EPS are smart. Our team is smart. They're going to figure out a way to do this that maximizes the outcome here. And in the meantime, we can tell the Edmontonians we're doing everything within our power to try things out. And we can tell the minister that we're actually looking at this technology that they have questions about.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Sorry, Councillor Wright, I just need to jump here quickly. I think it helps with your question, just in terms of planning for the timeline. I know Mr. Jones mentioned it, but I also wanted to clarify, we need to account for the procurement time as well, like the time we need to seek the quotations or go to the market. And then that's where it's going to be clear for us that what the actual funding is going to look like based on the actual quotes we are going to receive from the market. So
Okay,
just
so
wanted to flag that we
even
need to account for that too.
Okay, so even though there was one company identified, we still want to get those 3 quotes.
Yeah, in order to comply with our procurement processes, CD policies, I believe we should follow the requirements of our mandates.
Okay, so again, not rushing this, just getting started.
Point of order, there's no company identified in the motion.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Salvador?
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate all the lines of questioning. Maybe just one final one that I'm curious about. Appreciating we've heard from folks on the bylaw side. I'm also just wondering if there's anyone on from even like the safe mobility side. I just wonder if there might be a tie in there as well. And if there's, I guess, an opportunity to integrate some of the work that we're doing on the safe mobility side into this larger body.
Hi, Councillor Jessica Lamar here from Safe Mobility. In short, we have been in conversation with Calgary about their peace officer program for traffic safety that launched operationally 3 months ago. And so we've been learning from them and gathering information about their approach. We do have a report coming back to you for fall SOBA on municipal traffic safety expansion options. I'll be working with our colleagues over in community standards there to contemplate options for that in the report. So more information coming to you on this. Calgary's program, as Councillor Knack mentioned, does cover noise enforcement as well as speed enforcement in school zones. And they've done that as a limited scope to start the program, given that it's small. So lots of learnings there, and you'll get more information on that for fall SOBA. May be helpful for determining next steps budget-wise if you folks want to reallocate some funding from the automated enforcement operational funds towards that. Those are all discussions that we can have closer to December.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for the additional context. And I guess, knowing that work is going to be coming forward, do you see this as complementary then that could potentially, help build on or inform the existing conversations that are being had?
I think the first step would be if we want to move in that direction of setting up a team like that or developing those kinds of enforcement protocols within administration. From there, we would probably then need to think about what the priorities for enforcement are. If this is one of them, then of course we would need to then look at what kinds of supports are needed, like technology. So I think that would be a part of the discussion moving forward without putting sort of the cart before the horse. We haven't figured out all the logistics on that yet, but we need to know if there's willingness to move in that direction. And I think we'll be able to have that discussion very shortly.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please. Okay, well, that concludes the questions. Now to speak.
Mayor, so while folks are signing up for the report back, would Q1 2027 be appropriate?
2027?
We're hearing that, I believe we've heard from administration, they need at least a year. So that would put that report around that time frame. But we do need a due date for that report back.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Paquette to speak? Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so noise complaints are real, and I share the frustration of residents who feel their peace is being disturbed. Mine is too. But we have to be honest with ourselves and with the public. This $50,000 pilot will not be the full cost. It will inevitably grow into requests for more money, more resources, and more enforcement capacity. And we have to weigh that against the fact that in this same budget, Council cut funding for many different supports that we know save lives and reduce harm. We have turned down other potential actions because we did not want to give false hope in the past. This, to my mind, is the poster child of it. in the time it takes for this to be implemented, administration could develop a much more robust approach that has a much greater chance of success. But there's no direction here to allow them to do that. When we make choices, we show Edmontonians our priorities. I believe our limited dollars should first go to the safety supports that directly protect people, the safety efforts of peace officers that directly protect people and make our city safer. Not to experimental technology that doesn't yet have the authority or budget to be truly effective. That's the balance I can live with, and that's why I can't support this motion today. Now, if it passes, okay, but that's not going to stop me from going ahead and working on a much better approach that will be effective. I honestly believe, and this is my personal opinion, that passing this today is irresponsible. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jans to close.
Nothing further.
Please vote.
Just waiting for one more vote. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. I gotta leave. Councillor Principe, can you chair the rest of the balance of the meeting, please?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Continue on. We're off to item 10.7. Councillor Jans?
Thank you. I'll read it into the record here. That administration will provide a report to a committee with options and analysis for a transit-oriented development incentive program to accelerate new housing opportunities around LRT stations and to include mid-rise, 6 or more stories, family-friendly, 3 or more bedrooms, focus on areas within 400 meters of an LRT station, and alignment with other city plan goals. I don't have a due date. Oh, hello?
That was just a seconder.
Oh, okay, great. I don't have a due date. I'll defer to administration.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to introduce, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we've seen some big moves towards priority growth areas, towards trying to build inwards and not outwards, towards curbing urban sprawl. We know that our continued outward growth has many negative financial consequences for the city, and we know that infill or building inwards, especially around transit-oriented development in the larger scale, can have many positive benefits towards our financial balance sheet, towards our climate goals, towards reducing traffic, towards increasing transit ridership. We also know that right now the market has been imbalanced, providing a lot more 1 or 2 bedrooms and less 3 or more bedrooms. I challenge my colleagues to try and find 4 or 5 bedroom apartment style buildings near transit. It's either very, very low supply or very cost prohibitive. So I think what we need to do as a city, as we've kind of done already, is to put a little more emphasis. When we look at Century Park, it should not have taken 20 years to build out to where it is now. We're starting to see more development around stations, around Clairview, around Stadium Yards, others, but it's a little too low and it's a little too slow. And if we're serious about building more housing, building more affordable housing, building more attainable housing, building more transit-oriented development that really takes advantage of the billions and billions of dollars that we've invested in the LRT lines across the city, these are our best bets. These are the areas where we can have not just more affordable lifestyles in terms of you could live with maybe 1 car, not 2 cars or 3 cars or 4 cars, but you could be closer to transit, closer to work. And I think we have a role here to incent this kind of development there. Now, it's not just on our side. There is matching funding available from the the federal government through the Canadian Public Transit Fund. There's other available funding sources that are available here to support. But I think we need to take a leading role in what kind of housing that we want.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. Any questions?
Councillor Principe, we do still need a due date.
Thank you. Councillor, should we ask administration right now? Do you have an ideal due date?
I would suggest Q4 of 2026.
Okay, Q4 2026. Councillor Jans, sounds good?
Yep, sure.
Great, thank you. Councillor Rutherford, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with this motion in principle, but I think one of my frustrations, and it's a similar frustration that I had in the last item too, is the despair, like from a governance perspective, and I think this is what Councillor Paquette was getting at. We're all over the map, and it feels like we're sending counter messages to administration from one meeting to the next. So this I completely wholeheartedly agree with, but this seems counter to decisions we made at public hearing on Monday. So could the mover walk me through that?
Sure. This is looking at 6 or more stories. This is looking at more of a Century Park model here. This is looking at what I would say significantly different kinds of development. I'm not talking about 6 or 8 units. I'm talking about when we are looking at our TOD goals. This is trying to understand how we're going to get there. Some stations like Belgravia have apartment buildings under constructions. McKernan Belgravia. Others have nothing. I've been going down the Valley Line West, and there's a lot of spaces that are just low retail. When I think about how we're trying to preserve farmland and curb sprawl and everything else, I don't think this is contradictory at all. I think this fits in with the priority growth areas and the other work that we've been trying to do. Plus, it could unlock some additional funding from other governments.
Yeah, I don't disagree. So what I'm hearing is this push for, we want more density near transit. So we are not willing to entertain the missing middle in the transit orientated development area.
No, it's asking for a report to try and understand what options we have. The options and analysis for TOD.
Yes.
Like I think even during the priority growth areas, I know I said, is zoning going to be enough? Is just rezoning going to be enough? Or is there going to have to be something else that we do? And furthermore, the 3 or more bedrooms is a key part of this. I want family friendly, not just micro suites. So it's not just the where, but it's also the typology of what's being built in those locations.
Mm-hmm. And where would you foresee so you're thinking if this report comes back with an incentive program, that administration would be able to identify a funding source for that incentive program? Because when you're talking about, what's your vision for an incentive program? Is it a grant program?
That's what I want to get through the options and analysis. And I want to know all of the options on the table. Like, we hear from the federal government that more money's coming and there's new funds, etc. We hear from the province about some of their goals around affordable and attainable housing. Well, let's get it all in a report and take a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to be very open-ended and not too prescriptive here, as that's why the wording is, there's a few like key things I want, like 3 or more bedroom units, and some parameters such as like very close to the train, like less than like 400 meters. Also the mid-rise piece, like much more looking at those bigger wind projects, whether it's Millwoods Town Center, Bonnie Doon Mall, or even what we're seeing at Century Park now, etc. That's sort of trying to figure out the big wins here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. Councillor Wright?
Thank you. I'm just to administration, I think, we have the resources available to do this. Is any additional funding needed? And is some of this work already being completed?
Councillor Wright, some of the work is ongoing as we work to implement city plan and support our goal of 50% infill. You know, part of the work we've done under the priority growth area rezoning is part of how we can support this type of work. Our infill infrastructure fund, as an example, that we have through the Housing Accelerator Fund, is another tool that we have to encourage and support infill in proximity to transit. But some of the barriers that exist around developing in proximity to a station are things like rezoning or zoning and the process and time to go through that, infrastructure costs, land assembly, land costs, financing and capital and things like that. So we would look at the suite of barriers, I would say, or challenges that might prevent someone from investing around or in proximity to transit, and look at the options and analysis to support what's listed here in the motion. So part of the work is ongoing, and we can fold this into the work to provide a report.
Okay, so some of the barriers and challenges that you're talking about might not necessarily need additional funding from the city. It's just a change in process.
Potentially, something, you know, like land costs or land assembly, you know, for the city to have a role in that, you know, may be challenging, but we can look and see what our options or how we can support what industry is feeling our barriers to investing in proximity to our LRT stations to build, you know, mid-rise family friendly, and look at what we can do to further encourage and incent that type of development.
Okay, and this doesn't take any additional resources. You've got budget available for this going forward?
At this time, to provide a report, no additional resources needed for that. I think it would be dependent on the outcome of the report or council's direction in terms of what might be needed.
After the fact, yes. Okay, so we'll get the information and then proceed from there. Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Seeing no further questions, anyone to speak to the motion? Councillor Paquette?
Yeah, this is a good motion. I applaud the councillor for bringing it forward. You know, all of these things we want to look at. We actually hit the population benchmark that would have triggered maybe a look and potential adjustments to the city plan and therefore to zoning. And so small adjustments to be considered is actually a pretty good idea, which is why I'm kind of voting for these things, so we can actually take a look at them, because we have hit that mark where we are supposed to be doing that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. Councillor Jans to close.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that has carried. Next, on to item 10.8. Councillor Wright?
Thank you very much, Councillor Principe. So I do have a motion here for the administration to return to council during the fall 2025 supplementary operating budget adjustment with analysis and options, including an unfunded service package to fund the conversion of winter-summer temporary assignments to permanent positions, and with the due date of the fall 2025 SOBA. If I could introduce.
Thanks. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank
we
you.
need a seconder, though.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Mack.
So we did have an unfunded service package come forward to us in the fall of 2023 to look at making permanent some of those individuals who work both winter and summer positions. And so even though they are working pretty well year round, they're not benefiting from things like benefits or that permanent status. So I think we need to take another look at it. We've done some really good initiatives already with changing from temporary 11-month term contracts to making those individuals permanent. And what I'm asking for in this report and the analysis is, you know, perhaps it's not all positions that have winter summer not duplication, but that they work winter and summer continuously. But for those that maybe have a higher priority than others, because I do understand that we need flexibility in our employees as far as, you know, there are specifically some jobs and, you know, some individuals that just do come work for a summer or do just come work for a winter and then they go back to school or wherever. But so I would like to get a little bit more detail on on that analysis side before making any decisions. The last budget unfunded service package that was requested was, I believe, about 2.8 million. So maybe we can, you know, look at basing it on priority of those positions. It might not be as much of a financial draw as that 2.8.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone signing up to ask any questions. All right, Councillor Wright, please close.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Please vote.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmell. We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that has carried. All right. Next, notices of motions and motions without customary notice. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Sorry, I do have a notice of motion. I apologize. I put it in the chat. I'm just needed a moment to click on.
Okay, we are not adjourned.
I apologize. Very briefly, at the September 16th, 2025 City Council meeting, I'll make the following motion that the road right-of-way in the Macaulay neighborhood adjacent to 1053096 Street, Edmonton, Alberta T5H2H6 be sold to the Bissell Centre for $10. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Hearing no other notices of motions, we are adjourned. Thank you.